Some say that coaching is both an art and a science. What do you think about that, Coach?
Yeah, absolutely. They call it in the business the art of coaching, which is where you take all the sports science that we know and study, and then you implement it with the athletes you have in front of you with what they're capable of and the physical attributes they bring to the table.
And I'm sure it also certainly helps when you are coaching in a sport where you have also spent years as an athlete yourself.
It does make a difference. They say the greats are greats because they've both done it, learned it, and then been able to coach it, right? So many athletes go through their careers and then they've gained so much experience going through everything, and they want to help other athletes reach the top as they did.
Exactly. And I mean, look at our guest today, Chris Eaton. He did something similar. He was a British professional tennis player who played in Wimbledon. He moved to the US where he coached the Wake Forest men's tennis team to winning a team and individual title at the NCAA championship. Then, to add to his coaching accolades, his professional team has found success, winning the last three US Opens, two World Tour finals, and an Australian Open.
He sure knows what he's doing as a coach, huh? Coaching athletes to win on the world stage takes a special ability and comes with unique challenges, which he's been able to turn into competitive advantages. Let's dive into today's episode to hear what Chris Eaton has to share with us.
All right. Well, here we are today with Chris Eaton. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, we're excited too, just to dive in and learn a little bit more about you. We heard that you grew up in England and you played professional tennis and made your way over here where you were an NCAA coach of a national championship team at Wake Forest. And so, if you could maybe just share a little bit on your backstory and how you have evolved through the sport of tennis and just share with our listeners just a little bit about you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So obviously, grew up just outside of London. Playing tennis was sort of my main sport. I played a couple of other sports growing up, but yeah, tennis was the main one. I played a few sort of team sports for school and things like that, which was really good for me. Actually, I really enjoyed team sports, but yeah, figured that I was better at tennis than the other ones and really had a passion for it. And so went down that path. And in England, it's the schooling is structured a little bit differently in high school. So we have big exams at 16 and then big exams again at 18 when you graduate high school, but you can graduate at 16 or 18. So I actually left school at 16 to go and play tennis professionally. So it was a pretty sizable decision, but then did those last 2 years of schooling online whilst I was traveling and playing. So it wasn't a complete cut ties to education. My mum's a teacher, so I don't think that was that was ever going to be allowed. So at 16, I basically went. The federation in England sort of took care of me. I was training every day up in London, so it wasn't very far away from me. I was lucky enough to be able to still stay at home. And yeah, did that and basically played professional tennis for probably about 7 or 8 years. And that basically just involves traveling around the world playing, tennis in lots of different countries. And I think the way tennis works is the higher in the game you get, the nicer the places are you go. So when you start, you're playing in some sort of middle of nowhere type places, and the tournaments are, they're tough. It's very much take care of yourself and do your own thing, and try to get yourself good enough to win through that level and get to the next level. So it was a fun journey. It was an interesting existence. It's not, there's not a lot of money at the lower end of tennis. I mean, I was lucky enough to have some support from the federation in England, and they were fantastic to me, and obviously just trying to get good enough to get to the next level. And I was right on the edge for a while and just didn't quite make it. I mean, my rankings were, I think my highest was 320-ish in singles, 320 in the world, and 150 in doubles, and that's sort of just outside where you would make money, really. So yeah, then sort of gave it a good enough go, had enough, honestly had some great people around me a little bit older who'd done the tennis thing, and had the one piece of advice that everybody gave me, which was the best piece of advice I ever got, was just make sure when you finish tennis, whenever it is, you can look at yourself in the mirror and go, I gave it everything and I don't have any regrets. Because I think a lot of people sort of do the tennis, and I'm sure it's the same with other sports. You do it, you give it a go, you're not quite sure if you can do it, you sort of stop because you don't quite believe in yourself, then like, oh, I wish I'd kept going, then you keep going, and then it's sort of, you don't quite give yourself almost the chance to live with yourself later on in life. So that was for sure the best advice I ever got, and helped me kind of try to do everything the right way. And basically, I went till I was about 26-ish, I think. And I wouldn't change it for the world. And had a few pretty cool kind of highlights in my career that somebody of my ranking probably wouldn't usually have. But again, being British, we had some great opportunities with Wimbledon and things like that. So there was in 2018 I qualified, 2008 I qualified for Wimbledon singles, and won a round, and then 2 years later made the third round in doubles, which was pretty good highlights. And in between that, I've managed to play Davis Cup, which is basically representing Great Britain in sort of one-off tennis matches against other countries in the world. So like I said, I had some really good experiences, and definitely wouldn't change that for much.
A singles win in Wimbledon is probably, especially being from England, has got to be one of the highlights for a tennis player from the country. Getting to play on the big stage and getting a victory out there. Describe that feeling for us?
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. I grew up maybe 20 minutes from Wimbledon, so it's even more cool because obviously I'm lucky enough to be around there and go there as a kid and all that sort of stuff. But it was wild. I mean, I think I was the lowest ranked player to win a match there for multiple years. Pretty interesting story behind it. It just shows you really do need some luck in sport. So you basically have the qualifying to get through 3 matches, and then you qualify for the main draw, and you have to get into the qualifying on ranking. And I wasn't high enough to get into the qualifying on ranking. So the British guys have wildcards. So I think they have 6 or 8 wildcards into qualifying, and they give 2 out to British guys who play a tournament for the wildcard. So 16 of us play a tournament, all the guys who are just out ranking wise play a tournament, blah, blah, blah. The 2 finalists get wildcards. So that's a fair way to do it. It's great. So I did that, and I actually lost in the semifinals. So didn't get the wild card. Went up to, there's another grass court tournament in Nottingham. Played quite well up there, but lost in the last round of qualifying there. And so I was like, right, that's my grass court season done. And I get a call 5 minutes later saying the guy that beat me in the playoff for the wild card got injured. So they have a spare wild card for me if I want to drive down and play. And obviously, of course I do. So I did that sort of last minute, play the next day, kind of on a little bit of a wing and a prayer, because I didn't really feel like I was deserving of it, but things happen in life, and suddenly I'm playing the first round, play really well, win, second round, win, and then won in the third round and qualified all the way through. So that was a pretty wild experience, actually. And then it ended up with having, to be honest, a great draw first round. There Wimbledon's an interesting one. You can go there, and all these top tournaments, they're big tournaments in the Grand Slams, 128 players, so you can have, I would say at that time there was probably 10 players in the whole draw that I would have had a good shot against, and I managed to get one of them, because obviously if you get a top 10 player in the world, it's an amazing experience, and maybe I get a cool court, but you're toast, so yeah, it was really cool, and got quite a lot of media attention through it. And then after I won that first match, they actually gave me court 1, which is the second biggest court at Wimbledon, to play the second round. So that was, it was a real experience, interesting enough, something I'm completely unprepared for, obviously. I mean, it's almost like, it's like going from, I guess a completely normal job, 9 to 5, to suddenly being in a boardroom with thousands and thousands of the best people in the world, and just trying to hold your own. And it's something you're just completely unprepared for, which is a really cool learning experience, and sort of has helped me definitely throughout the rest of my career, I would say.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so hometown, 20 minutes away from Wimbledon, underdog. Like, was there a lot of crowd backing you? Did you feel a little bit more extra support? Obviously, the producers of Wimbledon put you on court 1, but atmosphere and people in crowd setting. The sports athletes kind of know that there's a difference in stage level, but like for someone who doesn't do athletics, or a coach or a parent, what is that stage feel when you have the support of the crowd, or if you have the support of the crowd?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to sort of say how much extra support I had for being local, just because the British crowd are very good with the British people at Wimbledon. So even if I had not been local, I would have got a lot of support. It's quite, it's quite a large part of the cultural history of Wimbledon, supporting the Brits and all of that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, it makes a huge difference in terms of, knowing that you're gonna have support. I mean, the walking out, it's very sort of, you just have, I mean, I personally had no idea how I was going to be, because you played, something I played all my life. I'm relatively confident I'm good at it, but then, I'd never played in front of, the second match I played was, I think it's 11,000 people, and some decent media attention, so lots of people on TV. So support certainly helps, because you almost feel like you can have a poor start and still have people behind you. It's not sort of, there's that awful thing in sport where, if you have a poor start, you imagine everybody's leaving, and it suddenly gets quiet, and you can hear crickets around and things like that. And so it's nice to sort of know that you get unconditional support, and again, there's a huge amount of, for me in those situations, there was a huge amount of, uncertainty and, self-doubt, because the reality is that my level didn't necessarily belong there in general, but for that week it did. I was, playing fantastically well, and stars aligning and all that sort of good stuff. But yeah, no, the feeling of having that sort of unconditional support is something you can't quite put into words, but it's so powerful.
Well, you were certainly at the right place at the right time, and you were the next man in line to take that position. And it sounds like you made the most of that opportunity. So congrats to you. That's a really cool experience. And something I want to hit back on, you said the best piece of advice that you received was to give that professional tennis all of your heart, to have no regrets. How did you navigate the transition to exiting your professional career as an athlete? I mean, I'm sure you played professional for 8 years. This had been your whole life up until that point. So it's not necessarily a switch decision. Oh, something bad happens, I'm going to throw in the towel and be done. How did you process the timeline and coming to decide that, you know, having been on the cusp of making money and being, you know, one of the top guys, it's very difficult to navigate, and tennis is tough on the body, tough on the mind. So I'd like to hear kind of how you navigated that transition and come to that decision.
Yeah, I mean, it was just sort of, yeah, it was interesting. A few things happened in my family that, you know, I probably wanted to be a little bit closer, sort of around a bit more. You know, and basically, I mean, the good thing about tennis is that you can, you know, it's not, when you're at the level that I was at, you don't need to make an official statement or anything like that. So, you know, I played a match. I remember it was in qualifying of Wimbledon. I was very good on grass. That was my best stuff, my best surface. So it's where I had my best results. And I lost to a guy who was about 110, 120 in the world. Like, you know, good player, but that was sort of in my mind, that was the type of person I needed to be like, because he was making money. He was, you know, in a good spot, great player. And I lost in the tightest match possible, played fantastically well. And I sort of just remember sitting after that, just being like, well, if I can't beat him in perfect conditions for me, you know, having played really well, then I think this is going to be tough. You know, and I was at 25, 26, I didn't go to university. So sort of having lived in the real world, I say that having worked at a university and understanding how some of my students view the real world through university lenses is slightly different. You know, but I felt like, having, you know, lived in the real world and had a job for, you know, whatever it was, 8 years, I needed to sort of start having enough money to live on my own, not living at home, you know, be able to have a life where I kind of, you know, felt like I was productive, I guess. You know, and that was a big thing for me, you know, just wanting to be able to rent an apartment to live in and all that sort of stuff. And so, yeah, I thought about that, and then it was sort of, I guess, the right time just to take a little break.
Yeah.
And I basically just said, you know what, I'm going to take, I didn't even give it a time frame. I'm going to take a few months off and, you know, stay at home and sort of do a little bit of coaching and kind of just, yeah, almost see if I missed it, see how much I missed it, see if I really wanted to go and attack it again, and kind of just test how much passion I had for it really left. So yeah, that was sort of my decision making. And like I said, it's not, in tennis, it's not sort of you cut your ties and you have to make a firm sort of black and white decision. You can easily sort of take a few weeks, months, whatever off, and then come back and, you know, get stuck in again. So it's not, yeah, it wasn't like sitting there trying to make a, you know, knife edge decision. It was much easier than that for me, which I'm very grateful for. So yeah, then I just sort of started coaching locally, and, you know, enjoyed it and enjoyed not having to get on an airplane again, and, you know, and then just sort of realized that, yeah, I think I was content with what I'd done previously, and, you know, honestly started enjoying coaching and just kind of thinking, you know what, I might be able to get myself some goals and some things that I can really go after in this field now, because, you know, I'm sure you guys know, once you've really tried to attack something and put everything into it, as soon as you don't have that, you have to have something else.
Yep.
To then, you know, if you're that type of person, you have to have something else to then go and attack.
Yeah.
Properly and have goals and really get stuck into. And that was the biggest thing for me, was just sort of, you know, coaching. I felt like I felt like I had a decent knowledge base, but didn't really know what I was doing. And I sort of really felt like I could enhance myself and get much better at it. And that was quite exciting for me.
Yeah. Well, it's cool to hear that. So you still have kept tennis as a huge part of your life, which is something that you have really enjoyed your entire life, and you just transitioned from an athlete to a coach. And you've obviously had great success as a coach. So tell us a little bit more about once you started coaching. Now this was in London, and then how how long were you there? And then how did you end up making the leap across the sea and start coaching in the NCAA?
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you say stay in tennis. I actually, again, somebody once said to me, which was really interesting. I kind of kept that to heart. It's like I actually think it was my mum, because she was obviously devastated that I didn't go and do proper education and things like that, being a teacher. And she was like, well, you've put in a 8-year shift in tennis. You've sort of got something quite close to a degree in that field. It seems like it's a shame for you to not use it, and that sort of stuck with me. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's easier than starting from scratch in something that I don't know at all. Obviously I didn't know much about coaching, but I knew a good amount about tennis, so at least it was an easy transition. So that was sort of how my decision was made to stay in tennis. But yeah, I basically lived really close to where I grew up. Actually worked for my first coach. He was still coaching in that area, so that was really cool to kind of go and work for him. I was working mainly with juniors, some pretty good juniors. Just private lessons, and then some sort of group stuff, some clinics, and just having some fun with trying to help these kids grow and get better and really enjoy the game. And obviously they sort of seem to be enjoying themselves, which makes you enjoy yourself. And so I did that for a year, give or take a bit. And then I actually, one of my good friends who I used to play with, a guy called John Peers. I think he was about 20 in the world at the time in doubles. He just said, listen, I'm actually having some trouble with a partnership. I've kind of, my partner has a coach who we share, and I kind of feel like I need somebody a bit more on my side. Like it's getting tough for me. Like, would you be interested in just coming and, coaching me and, helping us as a team and all that sort of stuff? And I thought that was a pretty cool opportunity for me. I'd spent a year at home. I felt like I'd kind of, gotten my feet back on the ground. I'd moved out, so I'd had a place, and, now I was going to get an actual, a job with him. So it all worked at quite a nice time. I was ready to get back and travel a bit. And obviously he was at the top end of tennis, so he was at all the nice places, so the travel is much much more appealing for that level of tennis. So we started in the grass season, actually. And it just so happened, and this is nothing to do with me, but it just so happened that he made final of Wimbledon 2 weeks later, and then final of US Open about 2 months later. So the start couldn't have been any better. But it was really interesting because he was playing in a partnership, and this happens in doubles and tennis. You spend way too much time with each other. Two good athletes who want to win really badly, and who inevitably have huge egos of how good they are, because you have to be that good. That's not saying ego isn't a negative thing. It's a fact. Like, the great athletes have huge egos, and that's totally fine. It's just really difficult to manage those sort of situations. So yeah, he was having trouble with his partner. They'd been together for a while, and so yeah, I ended up traveling with him. It was really cool. My first sort of 6 months, I guess. And then at the end of that year, we had to do a search for a new partner, which is quite interesting. We ended up with a Finnish guy called Henry Kontonen, who's really interesting guy. This was probably the biggest coaching lesson I ever had. So I had John and Henry as a team for the next year, and it was it was going to be really good fun. Started in Australia, really cool. But they were probably the two most opposite human beings you can get. So I'd have John was very I classed him as very Australian, sort of really serious, businessy, get his work done, work really hard, kind of go for it all, really good discipline. And Henry was almost like a little talented enigma. He would be, didn't love, no, I wouldn't say didn't love practice. I don't think he loved tennis that much. He just happened to be unbelievably good at it. Really gifted, was a great singles guy, but I think by the time I picked him up, he was 25, 26, and he'd had something like 3 knee surgeries, 2 wrist surgeries, just, unlucky. His body just wouldn't hold out for singles. So, I had him, and he would just be, hey, yeah, we'll practice. I'd like to practice. You just got to make sure it's interesting. It was all about keeping it interesting and fun for him. And he refused to practice before 2 p.m. because he'd stay up all night watching. Yeah, he'd stay up all night watching ice hockey from Finnish leagues or weird leagues, and wouldn't go to bed till 3. And so he's just and John was the other way. John would be like, right, I want to get up. He had that attitude of, if I'm practicing and no one else is, I have an edge, so he would be, right, let's do these 7 a.m.s, 8 a.m. practices. And, Henry would be completely on the other side of the spectrum. We'd do 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. practices. And it was actually an amazing experience to sort of understand as a coach that actually the most important thing is understanding the people you're working with, not even who they are as athletes, it's who they are as people. And then once you can understand that, then you can actually relate properly and maximize how you can work with them. And especially in what is essentially an individual sport, like tennis. So yeah, that was really cool. I spent the year traveling with them, and yeah, they had some good sort of success. They were building a team. It takes a bit of time to kind of build a doubles team to get really comfortable with each other. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. That year I basically did a full ATP tour schedule with them. And the ATP tour schedule is for traveling is incredible. It's start the year 3 weeks in Australia, and then you do, I think we did Dubai, and then back Indian Wells, then Miami, and then you do Monte Carlo, Rome, Madrid, Barcelona, Paris, London. It's just all the best places in the world. It was just, it was a really cool experience, and sort of traveling with those two was, a lot of fun, and I learned so much from them. Yeah.
What would you say, because you started working with a team that then split, you found a new partner, and obviously dealing with people is more important than coaching athletes, not dealing, but coaching them and finding out what makes each person tick. What was the moment that helped them, if you can remember, blend their doubles team together? Because they've been working together, traveling all these tournaments. One works out in the morning, one works out in the night. Obviously, you have to blend it together at some point, and they compete in all the tournaments together. But if there's one thing that sticks out during that year of working with the new pair together, what brought it together?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was that they were both very open to sort of it not being a stereotypical doubles team where you do everything together, you practice together, you do this together, you do that together. I actually came in there with a bit of a philosophy of, like I said, tennis is an individual sport, doubles is a team sport. It's sort of a weird combination. And honestly, I actually came in with the attitude of if both players get 10% better on their own, then the team has to get better. That it has to happen like that. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to get better together, right? And as I said, from the individual aspect of it, everybody has weaknesses. You know, someone's forehand's better than their backhand, and someone does this better, and someone does that better. So you've got to keep getting better as a tennis player to then improve as how you can be a doubles player and a partner. You know, so the best thing that we did, and the thing that was the most important, was they were very good at communicating with each other about what they liked and what they didn't like. Because again, when you get on court, when the tension's high, you know, the personalities kind of shine through, and John would be very like, you know, high energy, always trying to help Henry and, you know, get him with high energy, and, you know, he'd be very vocal, and Henry would be like, dude, I don't, that's not what's gonna work for me. I need just kind of give me a bit of space, and I'll you know, that I kind of like to be relaxed and whatever. So we spent a lot of time kind of talking about that type of stuff. And, you know, they did practice together a good bit, but there was always, when we practiced, it was always quite live and quite points based, just to sort of iron out these creases. And, you know, John always had that habit of, as soon as the point's finished, he'd go over and sort of, you know, high five and all that sort of stuff. And that was fine. But Henry was like, listen, I don't need you to talk to me too much in that situation. And it's interesting, because some people would get, you know, a bit hurt by that. And it's not a you're doing things wrong, I'm right, or anything like that. It's just hey, the reality is we've got to make sure that we can get ourselves to a position where we can both perform as well as possible day in, day out. And that's sort of that sort of peak state, as they call it. You know, and it was literally just trying to make sure they didn't, you know, wind each other up accidentally, just from being so different as personalities. So yeah, there was some interesting times, and they were also, it was quite good, because they were also very good at coming through me with the information. Because again, these athletes, big egos, it means a lot to them. You know, it's their livelihood, so money's on the line. So their communication isn't necessarily as clear and as sort of maybe empathetic as it needs to be. A lot of it comes across as you're doing something wrong, or you need to do this better. So, you know, I also learned that a lot of being a coach in this situation is actually kind of being a mediator of, yeah, this one's going to say things to me, and I'm going to change the words and relay the message, or I'm going to, you know, once I kind of got a bit more confident and know what I was doing, I'm going to completely ignore that because it's not relevant, or, you know, say it in exactly the same way because it's really important and needs to be said like that. So yeah, it was a really interesting one. You know, and then they started really gelling well, because actually I think in doubles, the more opposite you are as people and actually tennis skill sets, the better it is and the more effective you can be. So you know, they really ended up doing quite well. I mean, a couple of years later, I think about maybe a year and a half after I started with them, Henry was #1 in the world, John was #2, and they won Australian Open. So it was, yeah, they really did well. You know, and then, yeah, unfortunately COVID happened, and that was the end of Henry, because he was, like I said, he didn't love tennis enough that him traveling around the world had to involve, you know, he would go to a place like a Barcelona, and he'd have 4 restaurants picked out, and he'd want to go, and like nice food and good wine, and, you know, blah, 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 blah. And when they did a year of just in bubbles where you're not allowed to go anywhere, Henry's like, I can't do that. That's, you know, so unfortunately that was the end of him. So yeah, it was a really cool experience, and yeah, really enlightening, definitely.
Oh yeah, I mean, that sounds like a really great time, and you clearly had success with these 2 players, and it makes sense that for doubles that you don't want 2 of the same person. You, to make a whole team, it's good to have people balance you out, so that where one person may lack, another person can kind of fill in. And it's navigating that as a coach, their differences. So Now you're still coaching some professionals today, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And what's that experience like?
Yeah, it's great actually. I mean, it's good now. I still at the stage where it's great. So I do Rajeev Ram is the guy that I take care of the most. He's American doubles guy, doing well. They've done really well recently. He plays with an English guy, Joe Salisbury, which is Joe has his own coaches, so it's kind of split, but obviously everybody's in it for the same thing. And Joe grew up 10 minutes away from where I grew up, had the same coach as me growing up. So I've sort of known Joe for a really long time, which is great. So working with those guys, it's actually a lot of fun. It's very different to working with John and Henry at the start, because these guys are established, and they are, they've been number one in the world. They've won the last 3 US Opens, and they're really like high level players. I mean, I think they're 5 and 6 in the world right now, something along those lines. And Rajeev certainly has been there for a while. He's older than Joe. Joe's been there for a good time, but and it's interesting because all we're actually trying to do is find 0.5% to get better somehow, anyway. And it's 0.5% can make the difference. Like you guys, I'm sure, know, it's the higher the level in sport is, the smaller the margins are, and you are literally doing anything to get the tiniest little improvement or the smallest little edge. And so it's interesting. I'm learning so much about how it works at the really high level. And funnily enough, a lot of the time it isn't about tennis. It's not really about how you hit the ball. It's not really about different shots. It's so much more about how you manage mentality, and sort of how you manage performing day after day. And it's really interesting, because I'm in such a lucky situation that Rajeev and Joe are probably, I don't know this, but probably statistically one of the top 6-7 doubles teams ever. So we have conversations with Rajeev of like legacy and things like that, and the people that we're talking about trying to emulate are like we're talking the Bryans, who are the greatest doubles team of all time, and then you've got we're trying to figure out what Djokovic is doing, because he's arguably the greatest player of all time. And then you're looking at other athletes and trying to figure out what they're doing, what edges they have, and how it works. Because just the sort of, and it sounds awful, just the perennial top 10 players aren't what we're looking for. It's sort of the greatest of the great. And it's sometimes I'm sort of speaking with these people and speaking with the coaches of these absolute superstar athletes, and just sort of I don't know how I landed being here, and I don't know how I have the right to chat about this sort of stuff, but that's where they are, and that's what they're looking for. And it's an amazing experience and sort of opportunity for me, just sort of dive in. And a lot of my work is actually trying to figure out why Tom Brady won more than everybody else, and trying to figure out why and how all these absolute legendary athletes, why did Serena win way more than everybody else, and what was it this or was it that? And it's interesting, because it almost always boils down to it not being that they were just better. It's not like, I do a lot of looking at Tom Brady. It's not like he's just better than all these other guys. Like he's not better than an Aaron Rodgers necessarily in terms of throwing or this or that, but he's the only guy that can sit on a bench in a Super Bowl down 21 points or whatever it is, and go, yeah, we're definitely going to win. This is how we're going to do it. without any panic, without any, any sort of fear. It's just like, right, this is the situation. This is what needs to happen. This is what we'll do. And that's sort of trying to sort of facilitate Rajeev getting to that mindset, and the team kind of having that mindset is much more important than, it's much easier to make changes like that than it is to make a forehand 0.5% better, or a serve 0.5% better. It's so yeah, it's quite a different challenge, that's for sure, at that sort of level, I guess.
And now we'll bring it back a little bit. You spent 6-7 years in the NCAA.
7, yeah.
7 years in the NCAA, and obviously navigating mindsets, personalities, egos, and then skill level of tennis. It's very different on a professional level than it is in a team sport at the NCAA level. We've done a podcast with a former NCAA champion, and then you're now a coach of NCAA champions as a team, and talk a little bit about the differences there and how what you've learned as being a pro tennis player changes, but also helps assimilate what a team can do at the NCAA level.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this will disappoint you or not, but going into that, I was actually I'm a huge believer of and this sounds bad, but I'm a huge believer of like individuals having to be individuals within a team, and I think especially in tennis, it's still the way NCAA tennis is structured. It's still, you play your own match, right? So, you play doubles at the start, 3 doubles matches, and then there's 6 singles matches. And yeah, you play your own match, and that's what you have to win. And it's the only thing that you can kind of control. So we had an atmosphere at Wake, and I think this was it was very sort of anti what I saw with a lot of the other schools, was that we didn't go big on the team stuff. We actually went really big on the individual. We want everybody to be really good at tennis. We want everybody to come in, and we want them to think about being professional, because most of the kids that we recruited, wanted to be professional. So our goal was actually just to coach them as individuals, make them really good, have, however many it was, 8-10 players on our team who were all driven for the same thing, which was actually just to be great, and to have great careers outside of tennis, and then Tony, my head coach, Tony Bresky, and myself, our job was to help facilitate them getting better, but also manage the team dynamic, and it was more, it would not be team, everybody does the same thing. It would actually be the opposite of that, of, right, you're this person, you love to train, you need, X hours of training a day, you need extra this, you need extra that, that's what you're going to do. Number 2 player, yeah, you don't need that much, you're much more skill based, but you're not physically good enough, so actually you're only going to do an hour and a half on court, and you're going to do 2.5 hours every day in the gym, and your situation is going to look very different. So that's, again, it sort of comes back to the individual aspect that I spoke about with John and Henry, and making everybody 10% better. And like I said, these people, they're all different people, different humans, and you have to treat them differently. And to get the most out of everybody, it can't be one size fits all, which is what we were trying really hard to get away from. Because I think, again, from what I saw and from what Tony had learned in his, he had a lot of experience, that there are a lot of colleges that did college tennis kind of like, real team sports, like the football and this and that. And it would just be like, right, we all do this together, which I understand from that point of view, but we didn't really think it would work for tennis, or it would work in the best possible way for tennis. You know, and the biggest problem was for us was that all that did was just require more work.
Yeah.
You know, everybody needs something specific.
To your credit, you know, the positive thing that you said there is that you did something different, which set you guys apart, and you focused on how to make yourself successful and treat individual versus trying to make everybody do the same. And that creates its own team dynamic where it's like everybody knows that my teammate is doing what they need to do and I'm doing what I need to do. And that's a positive thing because it again differentiates you guys from any other schools. And when you're focused on how do I make my team better, and it comes down to every individual, that's a huge determining factor on the overall success. Every player gets 10% better versus, you know, like you said, programming that only gets half your team 10% better, the other half 3% better. You're not going to, you know, elevate the entire team. So to switch it thought process on it, that's a bit more positive than I think most people realize, and hopefully, you know, individual sports understand that lesson. You know, we do a little bit of track and field. Obviously, our throwers are different. Each thrower is different. Jumpers are different. Pole vaulters are different. Sprinters are different. Distance runners, but even in their own regard, some of the training is very similar to what you're saying. It's more individualized to the person and to what their weaknesses are. So yeah, it's still a pretty good point.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it worked out for us. I don't know if it worked out because we had a lot of foreign guys on the team, or it just worked out because everybody had such an overriding common goal of being a professional tennis player and being good that the team stuff just happened. You know, everybody sort of seemed to respect each other. And then obviously, like I said, the foreign thing was great because they were away from home. So you become much more of a family. Like, you know, they can't just head back for the weekend to see their parents or whatever. So it becomes much more tight knit. But then I also think that the players end up having a better relationship with us as the coaches because we're actually showing that we're taking them as individuals seriously. And then we actually end up knowing them better as people because we have to for this sort of model and method to work. You know, and the other thing is we had to do something different because it's, you know, I mean, college athletics is, as you know, it's basically recruiting. It's such a big recruiting game. It's the most important. And when you're Wake Forest, which is, you know, small, amazing school, beautiful school, type of school that, you know, you can really appreciate more once you're a bit older, to be honest. You know, and we wanted to be the best, so we had to go up against, you know, these schools in recruiting battle. Like, you know, we'd have to try to recruit against Georgia and Florida and University of Texas and, you know, Southern Cal. And you're just like, if we go toe to toe with these places, no chance that, you know, a 17-year-old male chooses Wake Forest over, you know, the football atmosphere at Georgia or the city of Austin, Texas being right there, and, you know, or the beach at UCLA being right. It just, you know, it's not realistic to win those things. So we had to do something different because we needed the same players. We needed the top level players, and it wasn't sort of acceptable to go down a level of players to get the ones that they wouldn't go for. You just had to beat them, you know, which is not, I'm sure you guys have schools like that. It just, there are certain schools that just are almost impossible to recruit against.
Right. I mean, it certainly is hard to compete against. You know, you've got a beach at this school or the football atmosphere, but that's where the international athletes may not care so much about football. And I'm winning an NCAA title as a team really helps play into that recruiting piece, because it's always fun to be a part of a national championship. But I think it's neat what you did, kind of applying your coach's eyes, seeing the weaknesses in your players, also playing to their strengths, because without doing so, without forcing this aligned, let's all be on the same team page, same team goal, by them all wanting to individually improve themselves, like it's all simultaneously working toward the same thing as a whole. So everyone is really working towards a team effort without intentionally trying to do so. So I think that's probably where that helped out a lot too. But I'm also just curious, kind of switching gears here. What else you're doing now? Do I have it right? You're a sports director in an emerging sports company.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, it's basically I do 20 weeks of traveling, so I have, you know, another 30 odd weeks to fill. So I am, actually a really good friend of mine from back home in England started a sports company. So I am, technically I'm the performance director. It's quite it's an up and coming company, and it has so many different facets. It's called Dante Talent, but it also has some other areas of it. So basically, right now we do college placement, helping kids get into college, kind of, you know, things that I've been doing for years of, you know, helping them with the NCAA eligibility center and, you know, the academics, making sure they're on the right track, especially the foreign athletes who, you know, don't really understand how the systems work, and converting GPAs and all that sort of fun stuff. So there's a little bit of that. There's athlete representation. So we're also getting some athletes, you know, again, it's all going to start within tennis, but grow to multi-sport. You know, so we're looking at getting some athletes to represent for ideally pro stuff, and then maybe NIL things. But I mean, the NIL market is completely insane. So I've trying to get your head around the NIL thing is amazing. I asked the same question to 5 different athletic directors and get 5 different answers. And most of it is, well, no one really knows, so I don't know what you should do, type of thing. So it's really interesting there. And then you know, there's also, we also structure sort of packages to help athletes, you know, figure out how to go about their goals. You know, in terms of, we've got a couple of tennis players who are looking for just structure, and how do I build a program? How do I build a team around me? How do I go about this business? So it's sort of, it does a whole lot of different things, and it's kind of looking to be a one-stop shop for all athletes who need a bit of guidance, a bit of help, a bit of, you know, even some connections, because it's going to end up being sort of ideally the one-stop place where they're like, right, I'm trying to do this and I don't quite know how to deal with this part of it, or I'm trying to do this, how do I do it and how do I streamline it, or I'm trying to do this, it's really expensive, I wonder if there's a way that we can, you know, again, we're working with some of these guys and kind of doing some photo shoots for them so they can make some extra money, or a couple of, you know, talks at dinners for some of these athletes, that again, so they can make some extra money to fund whatever sort of travel they have next, or training, or that sort of stuff. And it's going to grow into a space where we have, you know, deals with academies, and we can facilitate practices and all that sort of stuff. So that's the part that I work on at the moment. There's also sort of a athletic holidays business as part of this. So it's quite it's quite an all-encompassing deal. But it's really exciting. And the bottom line with the whole of it is there's going to be tech and data sort of underneath everything. So we hope to get to a stage where all of the athletes that we work with, we can actually then end up with sort of a platform of data points to help everybody of, right, this guy was a top 10 in the world junior, now this ranking, these were the metrics when he was 16, these were the metrics when he was 18, and, you know, this girl was a fantastic sprinter, and, you know, we got in touch with her when she was 16, these were her metrics, sort of, you know, vertical jumps and things like that, and just to sort of give everybody like an idea. And hopefully we can go even younger and kind of really build out that space of, right, my kid said he wants to be a a football player and he loves playing running back. And then you're like, right, okay, cool. He's 14. These are the metrics for an NFL running back when he was 15. This is where you're at. This is where he was at, and then, so it's sort of, hopefully it all becomes a path back to that. And that's sort of the underlying part of the company, which I find super interesting and can hopefully help a lot of athletes, and a lot of parents and a lot of, anybody who's around sport to really like actually have an idea. Because at the moment, you know how it is, everybody has, their child is, oh, my child is very good at a sport and really likes it. And you have no idea how good, could be the next big thing, could be just really good for this level, could be, has a lot of potential because hasn't hit this growth spurt yet, or whatever it is. And it would be nice to have some kind of measurable metric to kind of think, you know what, wow, he's actually ticking a lot of boxes here, or, well, okay, right, we're quite a long way off on certain things, and this is what we need to improve. He's not fast enough, or not serving fast enough, or not throwing far enough, or whatever it is. I think it would be super helpful to have that within the sports world and community.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like there's a great opportunity for this, and it sounds like you're getting in at the right time, and it sounds like a really exciting company to be a part of with the growth and everything. I know we're getting close on time, so just to give a spot for anyone who listens to this podcast who wants to find you online or social media, where might they be able to check you out and give you a follow?
Yeah, I mean, I am not the world's most exciting social media person, unfortunately. I tried very hard when I was at Wake because I needed to for recruiting, but I'm not very good at it. But it's Eats Tennis, EATS Tennis is my Instagram. That's the only one I really use. I can't do the TikTok thing.
Yeah,
that's not me yet. I'm sure I might, end up doing it. But yeah, that's my social media area, and I'm endeavoring into trying to do better with it, but we'll see if that materializes.
no worries. Well, thanks for sharing, and thanks so much for joining us today.
No, it was awesome to chat with you guys, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for the invite.
Well, maybe we can work together in the future or bring you back for another podcast.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime, I'll be happy to.
Awesome.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks
Yeah.
for joining us today. And hope you have a great one.
No worries.
Good luck in Miami with your next tournament coming up, and hopefully the company launch continues to go smoothly.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey guys, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. If you liked this episode, then please go ahead, subscribe, like, or comment. This helps us grow more than you know, so we can keep making more content like this.
Or you can visit us on sportfuelslife.com and register to become a member for free, so you never miss another podcast episode. Thanks for listening.
Do it, you won't regret it.